But before we dive into the disturbing tales of the night, let me ask you, do you have the courage to stay until the end? Most viewers don't subscribe to the channel, perhaps out of oversight, or perhaps because after hearing these stories, they never slept the same way again. If you think you can handle it, click subscribe now.
I didn't think witches existed. I still try not to believe it. But what happened in my house for 3 Saturdays in a row has left me afraid to walk in the dark to this day, even inside my own bedroom. My name is Eli, and this happened 6 years ago in Salem, Massachusetts. I was 16, my sister Mia was 12, and our brother Caleb was only 7 months old. He was the son of my stepmother Rachel, and honestly, we loved that baby like he was our own. Our father, David, had lost himself to us for a while after our mother died of cancer. He worked all the time and only started to get close again when he met Rachel. She was like the glue that stuck everything back together. When Caleb was born, it was like a light turned on in that house again. But then came the Saturdays, and they changed everything. Rachel started taking care of my father's sister, my Aunt Abby, who had the same disease that killed our mother. Every week, she spent Saturdays there. My father, as always, worked late. Sometimes he didn't even come home for dinner. So, it was up to me and Mia to take care of the baby. Just the two of us. And the dog, Shadow, an old black mutt, the kind that looks like he's seen more than he should in life. Rachel adopted him when she was pregnant. She swore he followed her for 4 blocks as if he knew he needed to take care of her. And he did take care of all of us, especially Caleb. He slept next to the crib, always, until the first strange night. It was Saturday. Mia was in the bathroom, sitting down reading. She always read locked in there. Nobody ever understood why. Caleb was sleeping in Rachel and my father's room. Shadow was there too, as always. I was lying in the living room, messing with my phone, until it stopped. Everything, the sounds of the street, the sound of the clock on the wall, even the sound of the house breathing, disappeared. It wasn't normal silence. It was like the sound had been removed. A suction, a vacuum. I sat up slowly, frozen. Mia appeared in the hallway with the book in her hand. "Did you feel that?" she asked. Yes, we looked at each other, and without saying anything, we went straight to Caleb's room. Shadow was standing between the crib and the corner of the ceiling, immobile, tense, with his fur bristling, tail straight, as if ready to attack. But he wasn't growling, he wasn't moving. He was just looking up at an empty corner of the room. I swear to God, there was nothing there. But it was impossible to look. My eyes hurt. The back of my neck tingled just from trying. Mia ran to the crib, picked Caleb up in her arms. He was sleeping peacefully. I stared at the corner for a few seconds before lowering my head. It wasn't just fear. It was a feeling that if I looked too long, I would see. We took the baby to the living room. Shadow came behind. We all stayed there, huddled on the couch, waiting for our father to arrive. That night, we ordered burgers, one of the few places that allowed dogs. We didn't want to leave Shadow alone, not for a second. When we went to pick up Rachel at Aunt Abby's house, my father asked us not to go in, said that Aunt wasn't feeling well, and at that moment, with everything that had happened, we didn't even want to. The following Saturday, things got worse. Shadow woke up strange, weak, dragging himself. We found a torn bag in the yard, full of rotten entrails, as if they had thrown it there on purpose to poison him. At the vet, they managed to save the dog, but he needed to stay in the hospital. On the way back home, a neighbor, Mrs. Langley, who lived in the house across the street and was more the type to mind her own business, stopped us at the gate. "Take care," she said. "I saw a woman standing there in your garden, near the bag, before 4 in the morning." My father thought it was someone with mental problems, but I saw the way Mrs. Langley looked at me when she told me. She was scared. On the second Saturday, we were alone again. Rachel had gone to take care of Aunt Abby. My father was working late, and Shadow, our protector dog, was in the hospital. The house seemed vulnerable. Caleb fell asleep earlier that day. Mia set up a mattress in the living room, facing the TV, and I stayed on the couch with my brother, just messing around on my phone until I fell asleep. The idea was simple. Keep Caleb always in sight. No leaving him in the room. No ceiling, no corners. But that's when everything got out of control. And when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. I remember dreaming about a shadow dancing on the ceiling. Not a figure, a presence. As if something was coiling in the air above Caleb, floating, slithering, like living smoke. In the dream, I wasn't in the house. I was far away, on a park bench where my father took us when my mother was still alive. I saw the shadow from afar. I knew it was happening at that exact moment, and I couldn't do anything. That's when I heard it. The crying, real. Caleb was crying, but I couldn't wake up. I struggled, writhed in the dream. I felt my body locked, trapped. Only when I fell off the couch, hitting my shoulder on the floor, was I able to open my eyes. The crying continued, and it was coming from my parents' room. I shouted for Mia, still half dazed. "Caleb is crying, didn't you hear?" She came out of the bathroom with a book in her hand, confused. What? A little while ago, there was nothing. We ran to the room. The door was closed. I swear to everything, I was afraid to turn the knob, but I opened it anyway. The crib was empty. The crying was coming from above. We stood there for a second, our breath caught. We didn't want to believe it. The sound of the crying was coming from the same corner of the ceiling as last week, but this time there was something different. My father's old closet, an old wooden monster, almost 2 meters tall, was right under that corner, and it was from there, from above it, that the crying came. Mia ran to get a chair. I climbed up, my hands trembling. I touched something, soft, an arm. I pulled carefully. It was Caleb, my brother, alive, but crying, huddled, with skin as cold as ice. I don't know how I put him in the closet, because I didn't put him there. The door was locked. He couldn't have gotten out alone. Mia would never have done that. But the scariest thing is that she swore she hadn't heard the crying until the moment I called her. We went straight to Mrs. Langley's house, without a cell phone, without a jacket, without thinking. She welcomed us, locked the door, and turned on all the lights. When my father arrived, with Rachel in the passenger seat, he seemed calm, but Mrs. Langley asked to speak to him before we told him anything. I don't know what she said, but when we left with Caleb in our arms, my father was white as a sheet. Rachel, wide-eyed, asked if we wanted to stop taking care of the baby, but we just shook our heads. We didn't want to run. We wanted to understand. During the week, the atmosphere at home changed. My father became skeptical, distracted, as if he didn't want to admit that something was wrong. Rachel started spending more time at Aunt's house with Caleb. She said it was because of the disease, but the truth, we knew she was scared, afraid to go back to that house. And then came the third Saturday, the last one, the most terrible of all. On the third Saturday, we knew. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't coincidence. Something came back to the house, always on the same day, and this time we weren't going to pretend we didn't notice. Mia and I decided that we wouldn't leave Caleb alone at any moment. Shadow had returned from the vet, but still weak, with his fur falling out, walking slowly. Even so, he dragged himself to Caleb's crib and slept, leaning against it, almost as if he knew he was in the final stretch. We chose my room as headquarters. It was the safest. We locked windows, pushed the dresser against the door, and put the mattress in the farthest corner, with Caleb in the center. We were going to sleep there, all of us. Saturday, 7 p.m. The storm was only inside. My father arrived early that day, the first time he'd done that in months. He said that Rachel would stay at Aunt's house because things were difficult, that it was better for him to take care of us that night. He seemed calmer than ever, but I noticed that he didn't take his eyes off Caleb. I didn't either. After dinner, we retreated, Mia and I on the floor, Caleb sleeping between us, Shadow at the foot of the mattress. I remember thinking that if we could get through that night, maybe it would all be over. But it wasn't over. It was around 2 a.m. when everything started. Again, Shadow got up suddenly, tried to bark, but his throat only let out a weak growl. He staggered to the door and started screaming. Yes, screaming. Desperate cries of pain mixed with anger. My father opened the front door, startled. Shadow ran out into the night, tearing his skin on the bars of the gate, through a space that not even a cat could pass through. My father shouted, "Stay with Caleb, I'll go after him," and ran down the street. Mia looked at me with panic. I just said, "Lock the door, stay with him." I grabbed the bike, went after, but I knew, that thing wanted us to leave, wanted the house empty, wanted the baby alone, and I fell right into it. I only realized it when I stopped to get my cell phone and call my father. Empty pocket. I had left without anything. I went backpedaling with everything, tearing through the cold air of dawn. The sensation was of despair, of urgency, of loss, of something that was already happening. When I turned the corner, I saw people in the street. My sister, Rachel, a neighbor, my father, and Caleb, in Rachel's arms. Where was he? I asked. Mia was still trembling when she answered, in front of the house, lying on the front door. Sleeping. She said that he wasn't there when she was looking. Rachel arrived with Aunt Wright at that moment. The neighbor, Mrs. Langley, saw everything. She had seen someone on the roof of our house, a woman, the same one she had seen 2 weeks before in front of our yard. This time, she wasn't standing still. She was moving, crouching, crawling, like an animal, with a dark dress, heavy, old, that floated with her. Rachel screamed. The neighbor too. The woman disappeared, went down through the back of the house and disappeared. Nobody had the courage to go after. Rachel didn't come back home after that. Took Caleb to her mother's house and stayed there. Shadow never came back. 2 weeks later, we saw him in a neighboring neighborhood, playing with a little girl, protecting her in the same way he did with Caleb. He recognized us, wagged his tail, but he stayed. We understood. He had another mission now. Today, the house remains silent. My father says it was all in our heads. Mia doesn't talk about it anymore. And me, I stay awake every Saturday until at least 3 a.m. Sometimes, if it's very quiet, you can hear a soft step on the roof. A light scratch, very light, like nails on the aluminum, but only on Saturdays. Always on Saturdays. We didn't baptize Caleb. My father was never religious. But sometimes, when we visit Rachel and Caleb wanders away for a second, I feel like someone, somewhere, is still trying to find him. If you also grew up in a house where the unexplainable slowly crept in, tell me, maybe it's the same kind of visit. My grandmother wasn't one for inventing stories. She was the practical, no-nonsense type of woman who solved everything with bone broth and silent prayers. You know those grandmothers who look at the sky, take a deep breath, and say, "That ain't good." That was her. Her name was Dolores Vega, but everyone called her Lola. She passed away last year at 89 years old. And at the wake, when my mother handed me Grandma's old red beaded bracelet, the one she never took, Faye felt a chill so deep that I almost gave it back. But I kept it, and since then, the crosses have started appearing again. This story isn't mine, it's hers. But for some reason, I feel like it's mine now, too. My grandmother used to tell that when she was a child. She would travel with her parents and younger sister, Clara, along an isolated stretch of Highway 138, crossing the California desert towards San Bernardino. Back then, the asphalt was cracked. There was no cell service, obviously, and you couldn't always tell if someone coming towards you was going to brake or run you straight off the road. They called that stretch of road the Death Line, because it was full of crosses, literally, makeshift posts, small shrines, wilted flowers, pieces of bumper, each one marked a life that ended there. And what my grandmother and Clara did to pass the time in the back of the car was count the crosses out loud, a kind of childhood game with simple rules. If you stop counting, she appears. My grandmother always laughed when she told this part. Childish nonsense, she'd say, but she never laughed at the next part. The story happened on a stifling hot evening. The sky was already turning orange, and the car radio was silent, as always. The adults were quiet. The children were counting. 17. Dezoi tu, dezei novi. Clara said the numbers in a firm voice, almost excited. -20, 21, 22, until she stopped, in the middle of a number. Total silence. My grandmother looked to the side. Clara was still, with wide eyes, her mouth slightly open, as if she had just seen a body fall from the sky. "Clara," my grandmother said. Nothing. She poked her sister. Still nothing, until she got angry because kids think they're being teased and gave her a light tap on the arm. It was at that moment that my grandmother's father, who was driving, looked in the rearview mirror and yanked the steering wheel hard. The car almost went off the road. It was close, very close, to flipping, but it didn't flip. When everything stopped, the girls were crying. Their mother was screaming, and Clara screamed as if her heart was on fire. She came to suddenly, shook all over, hugged my grandmother, and said only one thing. She was there, behind the cross. After that, her father didn't say anything, just drove, fast, too fast, as if he wanted to escape the road itself. They only stopped at a gas station, already in San Bernardino, and there my great-grandmother went to talk to her husband in a corner. My grandmother and Clara stayed inside the car, in silence. Years later, my grandmother told me that she only found out what he said in that conversation when she was an adult, and what he saw is what gives me nightmares to this day. My grandmother only learned the truth when she was an adult, and even then, she never told anyone except for me. Not because she trusted me more than others, but because, according to her, everything came back when you were born. But that's for later. Let's go back to that night at the gas station in San Bernardino. My great-grandparents were leaning against one side of the car, whispering. Clara had stopped crying, but she wasn't saying anything, just trembling. My grandmother Lola told me that she never forgot the way her father spoke that night. His voice low, nervous, and a phrase he repeated more than once. They were covered in blood. The two of them. I saw it in the mirror. Minutes before, when he swerved the car sharply to avoid hitting something, it was because he looked in the rearview mirror and saw something that couldn't be there. The two girls, sitting in the back seat, facing forward, were disfigured, according to him, for an instant. They looked like they had been in a horrific accident. Face covered in blood-torn skin, white eyes, mouth open in a frozen scream. And then, in the same instant, they returned to normal, as if nothing had happened, as if he had seen a reflection of a future that didn't happen. But Clara saw someone, when she finally managed to speak that night, at the hotel where they stopped to rest. She said that there was a woman behind cross number 25, not on top, behind, as if waiting for someone to count to her. She was looking at me. I knew that if I said 25 out loud, she would get into the car. My grandmother said that the hotel room was freezing, even with the heater on. That Clara slept between her parents that night, and that, in the middle of the night, she herself woke up to a whisper coming from the window. You saw it too. But when she got up, there was no one there. The window was locked, but there was something marked on the glass, a handprint on the outside. After that, the family never traveled on Highway 138 again. And my grandmother, she stopped counting crosses, stopped talking about the woman on the road, until the night when I, at 12 years old, went with her and my mother to visit some relatives in Lancaster, and we had to drive home late, by car, on the same road. My mother was driving, and I started playing the game of counting crosses, because I didn't know the story, but my grandmother knew, and when I got to 21, she screamed, "Amelia, stop." That night, when I counted 21 crosses through the window of Highway 138, my grandmother screamed for me to stop. It wasn't like "stop it, silly." It was a scream of desperation, as if she had seen me jump off a bridge. My mother braked sharply. I froze, and my grandmother started to cry. For the first time in my life, I saw my grandmother, Dolores, the toughest woman I knew, completely unhinged. "Where did you stop?" she asked. "At 21, I replied. She closed her eyes, put her hand in her pocket, and took out the small rosary she always carried, and began to pray, whispering, almost trembling. A few seconds passed before she spoke again. "If you had counted to 25, she would have come. It's always at the 25th. Always. She waits for someone to call her." My mother wanted to end the subject, made the next turn and took a detour, even though it was longer. I, of course, didn't understand anything at the time, but that night, in the room of my grandmother's house, while I was trying to sleep on the couch, she came to me, sat next to me, and told me everything. Everything that she had never told, even Clara. She said that the woman of Cross 25 followed her, even after the trip, even years later. She said that, on some nights, she dreamed of her. But the dream didn't start with screams. It started with silence. The woman appeared in the dream soaked in blood, her face unrecognizable, but her eyes very much alive. And she only said one thing: "You saw now, take me." For years, my grandmother said that she thought it was just trauma, until the day she went to visit a cousin in Barstow and, out of distraction, took 138 again, alone, and when she looked in the rearview mirror, she was in the back seat, soaked, covered in blood, with her hands crossed in her lap, as if she were a body, waiting for the accident. My grandmother screamed, swerved the car, almost died. But when she stopped on the shoulder, there was no one there, except for the bloody handprints on the glass. Since then, my grandmother started carrying the red beaded bracelet. She said it was a healer in East LA who gave it to her after hearing the story. It's not that the bracelet protects me, it's that it reminds me that I can't call her again. On the day my grandmother died, I was with her. She was holding my hand, and at the exact moment she passed, I felt a cold cut across my right arm, as if someone had grabbed it with icy fingers. Now the bracelet is mine, and every time I pass near 138, I count the crosses again. But I always stop at number 24, and I never look back. If you are ever driving on a forgotten road, and you count 25 crosses in a row, don't look in the rearview mirror. Don't stop, and for the love of God, don't say it out loud, because she listens.